video is a tribute to all the ex-lovers in the world, how by mastering your flow, one can desire without craving and suffering. How understanding and untangling your karmas and conditionings can help you become a better partner.
I love her.
While getting over your past relationships, benefit all sentient beings, and enhance realization and physical fitness all in simultaneity. How to sit, rest, gather, and recognize mental and behavioral patterns to understand the nature of desire and the desire of nature. What exactly is karma and how does it work? How instead of dissolving and getting rid of all your conditionings, if channeled right, desire can actually be the most powerful fuel for liberation. Thoughts and mechanisms of reincarnations, life reviews, and near-death experiences, escaping the observer's trap, practicing Tantra over Zoom in the Contemplative CrossFit Bootcamp, and my karmas with 1,000 heartbreaks.
We're gonna get that six-pack!
We're on our second week of the 90-day Contemplative CrossFit Bootcamp 6th cohort. The first week, our routing was the earth element, and the contact point is contact. So we're contacting contact. So we talked about last week what contact is, right? This one guy messaged me on Instagram and then he was like, it's so simple. You just be here now. And you know, silence is the best teaching. That's not ultimately wrong, right? But then most people who are trying to stay silent, first of all, they just rarefy silence, make it into a thing to grasp onto. That's the ultimate. You know, that's already a duality. Another thing is you can stay present all you want for eons. And if you don't recognize the nature of phenomenons, and again, the nature of how phenomenons compound, which is just dharma, you know, the word phenomenon just means dharma. So the wisdom of the dharma is the wisdom into all phenomenons, as empty of self, but sentient. And you have to recognize through the right view, the patterns of your twisting, the patterns of your formation and compounding in a non-conceptual way. Otherwise, your, quote unquote, be here now will still be coming from afflictions, which is this basic split in consciousness that leads to mental and emotional obscurations. And the split in experience exists in neutral, positive, and negative states. I do think a lot of people can have an anatta realization even, abiding in non-duality even, and they will still, get triggered. They're still like, there's still things I haven't worked through. The same conditionings will just come up because there's no wisdom into how phenomena compound, reinforced repeatedly to create your karmic patterns and trajectories. And to really grasp this, we break down the practice into the elements, with earth element being the contact and sensations, and water element being the flow of sensations that reveals the patterns that makes you you. Right? But what is contact? If you're having an experience right now, there's unavoidable contact between you and reality. Right? Your senses are firing all the time. If you're thinking, mental activities is the contact. Seeing, visual field is contact. Hearing, and then sound is contact. Touch, smell, taste, and you're grounding yourself in direct contact with the quote-unquote present moment. Reality is always contacting itself. If you're in tune with contact without deviating, you feel a sense of groundedness. And water is grounded on earth. And wind rests on water, but space, the space-like nature of mind, doesn't rest on anything, but manifests all the other elements. So the following week, we can investigate water and the air element, and then the fire element, which both illuminates and burns with the karma's conditionings to reveal your true nature. We're doing alchemy here, brah. And these elements are just analogies to represent different modes or different densities to experience, different ways that the minds aggregate, which leads to different geometries. It all depends on what routings you take in your training and what your mind is tuning into.
Creation of a water Buddha.
Just do a fire one.
Fire Buddha, yeah.
Air Buddha.
All the elements. Yeah.
Oh, the elements, yeah.
If you are free from here, you can fly.
Here's a poem by Ikkyu, a controversial enlightened Zen monk.
I, the blind donkey, know the truth. Love play can make you immortal. The autumn breeze of a single night of love is better than 100,000 years of sterile sitting meditation. Good friends of the Dharma, so proud. Let me tell you, a brothel girl in gold brocade is worth more than any of you. A sex-loving monk, you object, hot-blooded and passionate, totally aroused. But then lust can exhaust all passion, turning base metal into pure gold. All koans just lead you on, but not the delicious yoni of the girl I go down on. The lotus flower is not stained by the mud. This dewdrop form, alone just as it is, manifests the real body of truth.
If you sense into your body right now, you can already begin to feel the contact, right? The physical sensation, the posture of your body. And then you can sense into the density of the body, the pressure points in the body. That's a very gross form of contact, right? But then contact extends to everything. And once you sense into that, you realize that you're always and already absorbed in the moment with and as reality, with everything interpenetrating. Contact co-arises with the six sense spheres, which means that contact always comes with the feelings of sensations. And we say six sense spheres because if you really examine it through a direct experience, what this moment is, you're more like a four-dimensional hyperspheroid. There's the 3 dimension of space and the 1 dimension of time. And the six sense spheres in the non-dual state can be experienced as one unified sense door perceiving itself. And with enough yogic training, you can actually access even higher dimensions. But from the ultimate perspective of the unborn nature of mind, all dimensionalities are appearances arising through, with, and as the unconditioned, which has 0 dimensions. At the same time, no dimensions or no conditionalities can touch it. Can you train the mind to increase the sensitivity of contact and feel into the texture and quality of raw sensations before sensations further compound and turn into emotions and stories like I like this, I don't like this, or neutral? And then if you stay with the contact, the feeling, the sensations will start to flow because the nature of phenomenon, nature of compounded phenomenon is that it's impermanent, it's constantly in change. And once it starts to flow, we can start to route from the earth element to a more liquefied version of, really, it's just more sensations. Then we call that the water element. If you follow the patterns of this water element and be attentive, absorbed into the flow, you start to perceive form. Feeling eventually leads to form. It makes perfect sense if you want to understand the nature of karma or compounded phenomena, or even root formations, right? You want to examine the patterns in which these feelings and sensations are formed due to this flow. And the degree of subtlety in which you can recognize these patterns of flow and how much you can rest in these formations without reacting or grasping is the difference between a Buddha and a sentient being. So once again, you put in the reps by resting and recognizing over and over again. Realization fitness matters. And if you look at liquid congeals and coalesces into different patterns that dictates how it flows and becomes. And those patterns, conditioned, compounded over and over again, reinforced over and over again, maybe throughout your whole lifetime, or maybe even before birth, right? Or even before that. This is where generation karmas comes from. It's just like this movement of compounding, this pattern of compounding that co-resonate with other mind streams or other lives in similar patterns. It's like a symphony, right? That's why people have similar conditionings. They tend to like hang out together. They resonate together. And that's why when you start to exhaust some of those karmas, the people that you used to hang out with, they're vibrating the same karmic streams, they tend to fall away. Human beings are compounded phenomena that compounds more phenomena. Like we don't have conditionings. We are the conditioning themselves, right? And because of ignorance and conditionings, we compress and we contract and we twist the mind, which is otherwise boundless and unimpeded, into the self-view, right? Into this concavity, this dome. They say you have the twisted soul, right? Your conditioning is that pattern of twisting. People usually have a very simplistic and linear understanding of karma. Instead of thinking it as cause and effect, which is not wrong, it's just limited, expand the view as a mandala of cause and conditionings that are reinforced and compounded over and over to create your karmic patterns and tendencies. Which is, again, more like a circular loop. The cause is in the effect, and effect is in the cause, and vice versa. Cause and effect is linear, cause and conditioning is not. So the way we condition phenomena to split, to compound, and to twist is what creates a split in consciousness, right? Into the subject, object. I'm over here, the rest of the world is over there, past, future, and present. There's a volition and an energy that gets created every time a phenomenon is compound.
Hence the term volition formation, the current that perpetuates our habitual winds, karmic blueprints that chart the arc of our conditioned becoming.
You can stand on the grass and I'll be on the edge, so all you can see is mud and water.
Okay.
In Buddhist thought, these volitional formations, sankhara in Sanskrit, are the inner weathers of thought and feeling, arising from contact with the world, leading us to act, to intend, to become. the karmic clay shaping our days, the unseen structure of future holograms. One of the 5 aggregates, formation, can also be described as the process of stitching, gluing, compounding. Formation interlace with form, feeling, perception, and consciousness, a sacred geometry constructing the flickering architecture of reality. All 5 arise codependently, like lotus petals unfurling from a single stem, spinning the wheel of experience. To weave the pattern in these formations is to begin understanding how causes and conditions move not only across space and time, but from one moment to the next, one lifetime into another.
You usually perceive time linearly. We flatten reality into just one cause and one effect. If you start to untwist these knots of phenomena or knots of perceptions, you start to perceive quote-unquote time and space as a mandala that transcends, goes beyond, but includes all 3 times.
It takes the whole of the cosmos, every echo, every flicker of light, every ghost of a thought, to produce this single moment. Reality is a symphony played by infinite hands, precise in its vastness. Countless causes and conditionings that generate any given moment, every arising and ceasing, ripples backwards and forwards, reshaping pasts and sculpting futures. And if every moment constitutes an intersection on an Indra's net, then every intersection is interwoven with every other intersection. The web is alive. The mandala of karma, ever turning. Though karmas are appearances, there is trajectory, momentum, destiny. We learn to feel these inner rivers, to soften, fragment, and repattern.
Yeah, and then I was just like also noticing all these little karmic echoes that are just resonating, right? And especially that we're peaking. I've been getting like visions that are almost kind of like a life review thing before you die. Starting with looking inward, you see that actually, holy shit, you can actually see the co-resonancy of all these patterns that are compounding across space and time. It's like this thing that happened now, it's connected like a mandala to something that happens like last cohort or like last year, 3 years ago, during your childhood. And each time phenomena compound, it's going to create an echo effect. If you condition a compound the same way in this moment, it's going to trigger all the karmic echoes across space and time, not just in the past, but into the future. And they all loop back into the present moment. And the present moment also loops into the future, into the past, reinforcing each other, codependent rising. This is why we see the same patterns playing out over and over if we don't work through our karmas. If you develop the sensitivity to observe these formational patterns, you see these karmic echoes playing out in your life, and they can manifest as, say, synchronicities. And you start to notice different variations of the same themes unfolding over and over, and making a remake and a remake and a remake.
What the f***, man? I'm trying to get to the gym!
When we die, we're just gonna compound in a similar pattern, and then we don't even reincarnate, we just get reborn. Because then, by then, all these compounded phenomena come out, all these karmic patterns come out, and you have to face them, but then you're unable to have the fitness to sort of traverse through them if you don't have this kind of practice. So when you die, you just kind of, holy shit, maybe you have a glimpse of the nature of mind or liberation or whatever. That's why a lot of people say, oh, I actually had a glimpse of it. People that have like near-death experience. But then you have like a second of it, but then the compounding goes, and then you have no choice, just reborn. This is why you should start doing the work now, right? Die before you die, over and over. Otherwise, all the karmic debts that you haven't paid in your life will all come up and surface. You have a very bombastic death. These patterns and these ways of compounding don't just play out over and over from one lifetime to the next, but from one phase of your life to the next, or from one relationship to the next, or from one moment to the next even. So you don't even have to believe in reincarnation. Just observe the patterns that are unfolding through life that makes up how you are and why you're constantly stuck.
It's not the twisting that binds us, but the compounding over the compounding, the second knot tied over the first. The first dart is life's inevitable sting. The second is the story we tell about it, the pain of clinging, the weight of aversion. Unseen volitional formations afflict the mind, spawning action, reaction, repetition, the karmic centrifuge of samsara. To train in the water element is to learn the art of refragmenting, to dissolve and reweave habits, tendencies, and the patterns of becoming. Twisting and compounding are not the problem, for all phenomena, by their very nature, pulse between contraction and expansion, twisting in, twisting out. To incarnate is to twist in, spiraling and threading as the loom of life. No twisting, no muscles, no organ, no beauty. The very shape of bodies, tendons binding bone, nerves threading, cortex folding into sacred geometry. Species, plants, minerals, all expressions of twist, each a unique eddy in the current of form. This is how nature packages sentience into multiplicities of specimens. We are infinite, finite beings. Through the finite, the infinite knows itself. Your parents co-resonated karmic streams into an echo, wave patterns with temporary names. There are no straight lines in the universe, only wiggly no-things, spirals within spirals, lines of desires intersecting, interpenetrating, layer upon layer. The tree trunks rings, a frozen symphony of karmic memory. Even jhanas, those luminous absorptions, swerve like rivers in dream space. And the uncoiling of Kundalini serpent spirals from the root, winds up the spine, and blooms through the anus of the third eye.
You guys notice that how people have similar karma, their face even look the same?
Yeah, that's a Michelangelo effect. If you observe older married couples, the wrinkles on their faces, the patterns are literally very, very similar. Sometimes it's almost exactly the same. They almost look like they are either brothers or sisters or even twins. They talk the same. They laugh at the same stuff. They went to the same spaces. So they went through the same patterns of compounding together. The way they look, the way they move, the way they speak, all these things create patterns, compounding phenomena. And these shows are manifested as wrinkles that are echoing each other, right? And it's so interesting because even that echo you see in old people, you're like, oh, wow, that is the formation of water element. That's compounded phenomenon creating a pattern manifested physically in the flesh on their faces. That's why you can look at people's faces, you can just kind of read their souls, whatever, right?
So you're saying the wrinkles are like the fingerprint of our cumulative experience.
It's a fingerprint of your karma, so to speak, of the fingerprint of your conditionings. I'm in Sedona. They say there's a vortex here, but I don't know. My session today was pretty trippy. It felt like it was turned into the rock. The formation of the rocks is literally that's the pattern, right? The water element and the earth element, like those rings are literally the time. It's like every object is actually the fourth dimension. It's spatial, right? But at the same time, what are those formational lines? They're the evidence of time becoming. Like the vibrational pattern of time vibrates into space. The lines of desire, right? It's all right there in those rocks. Even though Mei Cheng calls the water element or this flow of sensation, he calls it desire. Usually in the modern mind, associate desire with something that's like negative, right? Or like, oh, you're Buddhist, you shouldn't have any desire. The desire is not the problem because this desire is just the force of nature. It's just the will of the universe. It's the reason why anything comes to be is because of this flow of desire. How, like, you know, flowers bloom, the sunrise, sunset, how we wake up every morning, even the way we're born into this world, creative expression, right? It's like the Big Bang, bang, all this desire forms the planets, forms galaxies, and here we are. The problem is not the desire in and of itself. The problem is not the, I guess, reproductive or the sexual energy of the universe in of itself. It's the craving that comes after the desire has been grasped onto. So if you don't let the desire just flow through the, I always call it through the least of the course of resistance, you, due to conditioning and due to your patterns of compounding, you grasp onto these desires, and we conceptually label certain patterns as good, bad, neutral. And then if it's good, then we grasp onto it. We want more of it. If it's negative, we push it away. But clinging is aversion. If it's neutral, then we can kind of become jaded or suppress certain emotions just because we feel good, we feel peaceful. But like we said, afflictions exist in neutral, positive, and negative states. And instead of just the raw sensations of flow, now we have I am sad about this, I am anxious about that. Now there's a reference point. Without grasping, there is no craving or suffering. You can desire without subject and object, escaping the observer's trap. At first it feels like you're standing next to the river and observing the flow, and then you jump into the river. And then you realize that, wait, the observer is also just part of the flow. When both subject and object are flowing, then they cancel each other out. Then you reach the insight of non-arising, non-abiding, and non-ceasing. When everything is the river, even the river disappears. The nature of mind is unborn and deathless. Beyond but includes the extremes of impermanence and permanence, where stillness and movement codependent rise, and even when you're not in the flow state, quote unquote, you're still in the flow. Unconditional flow state, beyond coming and going.
Ignorance, formation, consciousness. The first three links in the chain of dependent origination are rising together, reinforcing one another. If unrecognized, volitional formations cloud the mind, leading to actions that further compounds phenomenons to create the endless cycle of samsara. It creates the very obstacles it seeks to escape. To break the chain, we must look deeply into the root of our inner motions. Otherwise, we are snakes eating our own tails, trapped in a cosmic catch-22, where every method still bears the imprint of the very ignorance it seeks to cure. Without the right view, the nature of mind beyond all extremes, we tie new knots to untie old ones. We scrub obscuration with more obscuration. We drink poison to cleanse the blood. Even an alcoholic can become attached to sobriety as just another identity to defend. Eternalism and nihilism, two faces of a single view. Expanding consciousness and dissolving the self, neither extreme leads to liberation. But through right view, right effort, right action, the Ouroboros recognizes its own formation, reorienting from ignorance to wisdom.
So you look at my videos, it's just karmic footprints. But then how do I have one shot and then the next shot is like somehow related, but then I was grabbing footage from like 10 years ago or something. But then that's a karmic resonancy right there, right? The logic of the next shot could be something from like 10 years ago or maybe from like 5 minutes ago. It's just kind of compounding your life like that. Again, we're not trying to get rid of the compounding because whatever you're trying to get rid of the compounding is just another compounding. Once you recognize the compounding and have the fitness to navigate around it, then how phenomena compound or how your mind aggregates to determine the geometry of your present moment becomes the art of your life. Instead of unconsciously compounding over and over again, you become your own reality, cosmic film editor, cinematography 24/7. I've had experiences like that before, but this was the most intense one. But the reason why I was so interested in this one is because I was seeing how my own karmic ripples inherently tie to those around me. Like each of us is almost like the center of the mandala. But then what's in the center is also in the peripheral, right? There's no center, but everything is the center in a sense. And everyone who is intertwined with your karmic streams will be affected. So if you untangle this particular bundle of karma, you're also untangling and reconfiguring other karmic patterns that you're co-resonating with. And they'll in turn affect the mandalas that they're connected to. And those closest to you will have the most impact upon your breakthrough, however big or small. But the rippling effect can stretch back generations, right? Ancestrally even. That's why we say when we work on ourselves through the spiritual work, we're also flipping the karmas of 8 billion people and all the sentient beings that have ever existed and will ever exist. This flipping of the karma isn't just a one-time thing, right? Each time you notice the pattern, you iterate a little bit. That's why every relationship, hopefully you're improving and learning from the previous one. This is how one heals the wounds of 1,000 heartbreaks. Instead of trying to get over or get rid of the memories of ex-lovers, you sit, gather, rest, and recognize the pain. Find that middle way, neither dissociating nor indulging in the feelings, and let the karmic knots repattern and refragment themselves. Because where would you dissolve the conditionings into? That which is trying to get rid of something is just more grasping.
Stop me.
Let me give you an example of karmic ripples echoing through time. When you look at a barbell on the last set of a deadlift and you're really tired and you don't want to lift the weight and it's getting really heavy, but you know you have to complete this workout. So you make contact with the feeling of bracing yourself with the barbell and the feeling of anxiety and so on. Not only that, you're also making direct contact with the presence of you looking at the barbell across space and time, because this moment of looking at the barbell will echo through space-time. There will be many, many times in the past and many, many times in the future where I am staring at this barbell and I don't know whether or not I can lift it.
Motherfucker!
And you can tap into visions of dealing with that moment before and after, viscerally. Right? All the moments that you were overtraining, tired, psyched up, getting PRs, failing the lift, etc. Right? So all the cause and conditionings that leads up to different variation of the same image of you looking at the barbell are all contained in this moment, both as potential and as what had actually happened. And which again, the 3 times are not distinct. And you can actually pin a moment in the future, say doing a powerlifting meet where you got a PR or set a state record, and embodying the presence of, say, Ronnie Coleman meeting you at the last set, the last rep, doing the most important, toughest workout. So the through line between this moment and that moment would have certain qualities and certain streams of intentions and desires that are echoing each other. So if you just keep on exerting, you'll get there. In a sense, you're already here. There's already a fully enlightened version of you right now. We associate contact with feelings, with sensations. And now if you want to take this practice further, we can start to investigate the flow of sensations, from the earth element to the water element. Once you start to rest your mind in contact, you'll see that nothing is solid. Everything is in constant flow. In the context of the bootcamp, we associate the water element with form, actually. So the 5 aggregates are what? Form, feeling, perception, fabrication, and consciousness. But then those 5 aggregates are constantly shape-shifting. That makes up your present moment experience. So you can say the earth element is predominantly the feeling aggregate. Okay, what does it feel like sensorially to be alive right now? Yeah, and then the water element is associated or predominantly highlighted by the form aggregate. And the air element highlights the perception, consciousness, and fabrication. So you can say this entire methodology is a way to understand non-conceptually the structure or the module of the mind to realize its true nature, which includes but is beyond the aggregates. These elements, they also aren't distinct, right? They're just different densities of experience. It just depends on what your mind is tuning into. So you sit, gather, rest, and recognize phenomenons.
So this gathering process is the unification of mind. Sure, we can say that this process can be applied with certain techniques and methods, like you're setting metta to yourself, you're setting that love, that open attitude towards embracing that. The other technique could be looking at very clearly, drilling yourself into a very still position and then allowing these different emotional patterns to be vipassanized, to see it very clearly to the point that the stickiness just wouldn't be sticky anymore. You just see the pattern. You see its impermanence. All these different methods and techniques fall under the principles of gathering. The methodology includes many, many, many methods, techniques. But if we don't understand the bigger picture, then we'll try these things in vain. Because essentially, you just need to attitude of coming as you are, so-called authentically be yourself, take ownership of whatever's going on. If you're getting annoyed, sit with that annoyance and gather them in. Instead of crushing that story with another story or abandoning them by that kind of detachment, we simply gather them.
You might be like, why is the water element form? But what is the distinction between form and formlessness, right? Emotional states are forms, desires are forms, the flow of conditionality. If we associate that with the water element, we see that there is no form that is inherently solid or substantial. That's actually a really brilliant way to tap into how every single form that you perceive is formless. A way for you to investigate how compounded phenomena lacks permanence and inherent existence, which is precisely why there is form, right? You know, have you heard the phrase, emptiness is form and form is emptiness?
Can we see these patterns without doing anything extra? Can we rest as awareness, not as escape, but as realignment to match the flow of life itself? Where desire is not enemy, but why anything exists at all. It is the pulse of nature, her wish to procreate, to bloom, to dance, to will without agency, to desire without clinging, to allow desire flow without drowning, to pay homage to our afflictions without hiding. Only through our conditioning, with it, as it, can we realize the unconditioned. Compounded things arise only to seize. This is the nature of phenomena. Each wave curling back into the sea on its own accord. There is no need to dissolve or inflate. Karma sorts itself, no escape through effort or exhaustion. One cannot outrun or outdissolve creation. One can only bow to its rhythm and acknowledge the beauty of our karmic shape.
Because all forms lack inherent existence, infinite potentiality is possible. If phenomenon has a fixed essence, then all these forms wouldn't even arise. If self and others have an inherent existence, there'll be no relationship because then we cannot manifest each other. If you look at a cup, yeah, you think it's static and solid, right? But it's constantly in the process of becoming and decaying due to entropic forces. If you go into it, it's just vibrations, right? Even if you think you're standing still, you're still unfolding and evolving through time. If you just look at a cup for like a minute, it's starting to morph. A cup is like water, right? And not just perceptually and phenomenologically, but ontologically too. A cup can be a drinking tool, a teaching tool, and it can also be a weapon. So even the meaning of a cup is impermanent and other dependent. A cup is only a cup because it's based on other things. That's not a cup, right? All these different countless webs of causal conditioning have to come together for the cup to be a cup. But intrinsically, there is no cup. That's the nature of compounded phenomena. So it's all dependent on causal condition. Each line of these causal conditions is also connected to infinite other webs of causal conditions. Nothing has a center. Right? All forms like flow into each other. That's another thing that people get trapped in. Is that duality between form and formlessness. Because if there's a distinction between awareness and sensations, then there's still a duality. So you look at an object as neither form nor formless. Another thing that we investigate into is how you react to things. Because every time you react to a sensation, you compound it a bit more. You're creating this volition for it to continue its own patterns of compounding. And this is how karma is created. But if you recognize it, then the phenomena is begin to untwist. Other than recognize, you have to rest within the conditioning to be able to recognize it, right? And resting is the fitness to be with whatever is arising, regardless of the highs, lows, or neutral. Sit, gather, rest, and recognize. Gathering is to collect the mind, to unify your experience and gather all the sentient resources so you can rest into whatever is arising. And that takes fitness. So it's not like you don't need to put into reps. Realization fitness is realer than real. Most non-dual teachings, they don't really talk about becoming or volition. They don't talk about trajectory. They just cut off time completely. Oh, there is no time. That's it. They will be fixated on the extreme view of timelessness. Ultimately, it's timeless, but timelessness also includes the 3 times. The problem with a lot of non-dual teachings is that they take the ultimate view and they apply it to all the relative planes of existence. And then they can bypass like that, right? Oh, there's no karma, but I'm still living in samsara. I'm still suffering. Just sitting without recognition, without wisdom is not enough to get to the root of it. How are phenomena compounded this way or that way due to what causes and conditionings? Even after a very deep awakening, it's very easy in that space to just suppress and bypass, to hide in awareness, so to speak. But phenomena are still compounding. If your mind isn't stabilized enough in contact, in the earth element, you're not going to have the stability of the mind to investigate the water element because you'll be drowning in emotional proliferation, obscurations, and being pushed and pulled by desires. And if you don't stabilize and gather the sentient resources of the flow, you won't have the collectiveness to recognize and investigate into the air element, which is mental proliferations, cognitive obscurations, and discernments in perceptions, and how you might create meaning and make sense of things, the sense of divided knowing. When all the causes and conditionings of the three elements are gathered through yoking the entire field of experience together into a unified whole, that's what yoga means, to yoke reality together, right? Then we create the right condition to stir up the fire element, which then illuminates and burns away the karmas and conditionings. And the nature of mind will be revealed, right? Layer by layer, and you go through cycles and cycles of this. And we'll go into the air element in future episodes. For the entirety of this training methodology, sign up for the 90-day Contemplative CrossFit Bootcamp. It's like for a while, I really wanted a female training partner to be in the bootcamp. My ex-Pippa, the moment that I stopped caring about it, she like messaged me, she's like, can I join? But she's basically my training partner in terms like I have to take her accountable. And I'm taking on that responsibility. It's like I'm not doing it to get back with you, but I do want to take care of you. That's part of the main training in this cohort. Working through our entanglement, we represent untangling the karmas I had with all my exes. Really interesting loops. And Pippa and Nicole actually have the same birthday too. Oh. They're actually 1 day apart, same year. Yeah. And the girl I'm seeing right now has the same birthday as me.
I watched her manifestation.
Nikki? Nicole?
Yeah. I actually had a call with her. It's been so much memory.
It's almost a desire is the unfolding aspect of the nature of mind, and love is the abiding aspect of nature of mind. Neither one nor different. Like that desire is just the part that flows. But then it's become a problem when that desire, the part which flows, become identified, now becomes an identity, accumulate until it is so-called born of its own inherency, like an actual person possessing a body, popping out of the vagina. Or it could be a moment right now that, oh, I'm here.
On the Bodhisattva path to Buddhahood, the goal isn't to completely eliminate all emotions or desire, right? Bodhisattva retains some of his desires. So practitioners utilizes this energy as a catalyst to train at the marginal gains of their fitness.
I fucking hate these squats.
In order to develop powers and cities or relational skills for the sake of all sentient beings. So arhats, in a way, their kundalini juice is all dried up, so they don't have any more sentient resources to fuck all sentient beings. This is not to say that arhats are inferior, it's just it requires a different kind of contemplative fitness. When I do the sits, it's almost like I am not doing it for myself anymore, right? There's no distinction between self and others, right? Just saying I'm doing it for others is already a duality, but just the fact that I'm taking on other people's karma. When I try to go into this particular person, she has some stuff getting released, and I could actually feel that, right? And I knew that was happening when she confirmed it after. And this week, there was one particular sit that she told me that she cried again, and that's the only 2 times that she's cried. And she described how her nervous system, or I don't know, just there were swerving movements, almost like a onset of a kundalini release manifesting in her body, and it's just like something might pop. And then I was like, yeah, that's what I was doing. I was doing the swerving thing in her body. And then, but I was like, I'm still new to this territory. This all just can be all this coincidence or whatever the case may be. But more of these things will just start to happen. Once you kind of become reality, it's like synchronicity, like every moment is like peak experience every moment. 8th Bhumis is kind of like max out emptiness or whatever. But then that's the starting point, starting condition for you to develop yogic intelligence.
When you can rest in that immovability, that's when you develop the 9th and the 10th. It's like the good intelligence in that it's like you can speak from wisdom and truth without any sort of inhibition or restriction. That prepares you for this cloud of Dharma where it's just a rain of compassion, wisdom. That's the territory when people talk about like the Buddha can washing dishes. It's the synchronicity of all these causes and conditions. You're walking Pure Land in that sense.
With these new capacities, it takes virtue. That's why you got to be virtuous. Usually when I do one-on-one calls, it's just me talking, right? But then I think she was trying to do that staring thing with me, so I just did it back. And then literally she was going through some stuff, like her expression just started changing. It's like she was gonna come or something. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, yesterday's sit was just full of heartgasms and braingasms.
Powerful sit. It felt orgasmic. There was this tantric thing going on, but it wasn't sexual. It was more like our emanation bodies were interpenetrating, deconstruct the conditioning of thinking that we're separated by the screen, right? Or different locations, but there's actually zero distance. When you instantiate the higher Bhumis, have the flexibility in aggregation to be yourself, be the other person, both people, and neither, all in simultaneity. feel today?